Prison is, oh, it's not what you think it is. It's really tough. Going into the prison system, if you want to go into the prison system, you have to be able to love everybody. And that's going to be difficult. They have a thing they're called C-files. A C-file is a file on the inmate that tells you everything that he ever did from a juvenile on up. And it's available to anybody. It's available to anybody in this room. If you want to know what an inmate did, all you have to do is go to the prison that he's in, go to personnel, and say, inmate so-and-so is here, and his number is so-and-so, and I want to see his C-file. You have a public right to that information. They will go get that. See, they don't tell you this stuff because they don't really want you to come and look at it. And they have to go in the back and bring you his file, and you can read everything in his file from beginning to end to see what he is. I don't read them. You know why I don't read them? Because God is the one who's going to be doing the judging. He did not send me into the prison to judge people. He sent me into the prison to get people help, to get people released, to get them saved, to get them released from them sins. He didn't go in there for me to judge them. If I want to look at somebody who don't need to be saved, I can just look in the mirror. So I don't look at C-files because I'm human. I'm a man. And it's going to be very difficult for me to have an objective approach to a person because some of the crimes they committed are real hideous. So you have to be able to deal with that. You might be talking to somebody who's a serial killer. He could be a pedophile. He could be a rapist. But the responsibility if you're going into the prison is to show love to that person, to that individual, regardless of what he's in there for. Because the Bible says only takes one sin to end up in hell. Just one. We have a problem when we have tears, where your sin is not as bad as mine, and my sin is not as bad as yours. When God only looks at it as sin, period. He doesn't have levels. Either you messed up, so we need to look at everybody in that same light. Who can volunteer? Anybody that wants to volunteer to go into prison is able to volunteer and go in. What if you have a record? What if you have a prison record or a jail record? It doesn't preclude you from going in. It just means that they're going to look at you a little bit closer. Sometimes the best people to go in and talk is people who have lived that lifestyle. That's why I understand why God allowed me to live the lifestyle that I did, because I have a sincere compassion for the men that I talk to, because I understand what they're going through while they're locked up, because it's not always fun. It's not always fair. They will lead you to believe that the inmate is always wrong, but that's not true. There's some officers and staff that work in the prison that need to have cellies. They need to be locked up. They're worse than some of the inmates that's in there. When you go in there, you have to deal with that. There's two types of volunteers. You have your volunteer that comes in and has to sign in and check in every time. Then you have your volunteers like Brian here, who has a brown card, who doesn't have to go through all that. You get a brown card means you can go in unescorted. You don't need to be assisted. If you're just a regular volunteer, then somebody has to go in with you. Safety and security will always be first and foremost of the institution. It just takes precedence over everything. You can have and I'm sure Brian has went through this. He's driven all the way out to the prison to find out that they're on lockdown and you can't get in. What about cell fronts? Nope, can't do nothing, we're on a lockdown. Whenever they throw safety and security at you, whatever you're going to do, you can forget about it. The safety and security will trump religious service and everything else. That's always going to be number one. What you can and cannot wear. You cannot wear blue because the inmates wear blue. You don't want to get mistaken for an inmate. Women dress appropriately. Amen. Women dress appropriately. You don't want to go Remember where you're going if you're a woman. You're going into a prison that's full of men that have not seen a woman, have not been able to touch a woman. And if you go in there dressed the wrong way, you just might get the wrong response. And that's not the kind of response you want. Find your husband outside of prison. Don't find one in prison. I say that because there's a lot of women that do that. There's a lot of women that come to the prison and they look for a husband. They're looking for a husband in prison. And the state says it's their civil right to be married. I think if a woman is married to a man, or a man is married to a woman and they go to prison, you ought to stand by your man or stand by your woman. But I don't think you ought to go to prison and look for a wife. You ought not go to prison and look for a husband. I think God has some more men out here other than the ones that's in prison. And be aware, inmates will come to church service and they will say everything that you want to hear. They have a long-range plan. They will spend years to manipulate you into doing what they want you to do. You have to always be mindful of where you're at and who you're talking to. And it's hard because we have a heart of compassion and want to help. We have that heart that says, I want to believe him, that he's really changed, that he's not that same individual, that he's really doing this. Well, he really doesn't have that. Well, it won't hurt. I'll just bring him this one little item that he's not supposed to have. That's how it starts. Never give an inmate anything that he's not supposed to have, even if it's such as little as a pencil. Because he's asking you for that, because he wants to get you ready for the next thing that he's going to ask you for. And then the next thing, and then one day you look around and you're going to be in handcuffs. Because you were bringing in drugs and you were wondering, how did I get to this point with a pencil? Started 5 years ago. He's doing a lot of time. He doesn't care. One of the things I used to help me to say no, if an individual is asking you to bring something in that could cost you to go to jail or lose your job or cause you problems, what he's saying to you is, I don't care nothing about you. Because if he cared anything about you, he wouldn't be asking you to do anything that would bring harm to yourself. And if you can look at it like that, it becomes easy to say no, because now you know he don't like me. Because if he had any love for me at all, he wouldn't be asking me to do this. Then once you realize that he don't care about you, it's easy for you to say no. What about if you're in prison and there's an alarm? When there's an alarm in prison, you'll be no doubt that there's an alarm because it's very loud. And it's going to get your attention, and you're going to see all the officers running to wherever that alarm is coming from. And the inmates are trained when the alarm goes off to get out. They're prone out on the ground. If you're not aware of what's going on, you hear all these officers running by you and they're hollering, get out, get out, get out, get out. You get out too. No, don't do that. You don't have to get out. You stay on your feet. Get out of the way, but don't lay down on the ground. It's tough, but that's what you have to do. Report all suspicious activity. If you see something that just doesn't look right to you, tell somebody.
Like what?
Say you see an inmate pass another inmate something, and you're not sure what it is, but the way he did it looks suspicious to you. It looked like maybe he shouldn't have did it, but you're not sure. Go tell somebody. Because safety and security always takes prompt over everything. If it looks suspicious to you, maybe it's not. But they rather know that something happened than not know. So if it looks suspicious, tell. You can't be... one of the biggest things in prison for the inmates is they don't like snitches. You're not supposed to snitch. And if you snitching, boy, you gonna get in a lot of trouble. I tell them all the time, I get paid to snitch. It's in my contract. My contract says if I see any suspicious activity to report it, I'm telling. Take that same attitude. If it looks suspicious, tell somebody. You never know, you might save somebody's life. Don't pass anything from one inmate to another inmate for an inmate. If inmate say, man, can you give this guy this note? Don't do that. There's something wrong with that. If he asking you to pass something, why he don't want to pass it? Don't become a pawn. Working with prison staff. I'm sure Brian can validate this. Everybody at the prison is not on board with religious service. Some people are going to fight you tooth and nail. They're going to tell you it's locked down. Everybody's not on board. Not just Christian Science. They don't want to have any religious program. The reason why we have religious program in the prison system is because it's a constitutional right. If they could take it away from them, they could, but they can't. It's a constitutional right, and they have to let them have it. And you will have staff that will do everything they can to prevent you from having it. They will lie to you. I have went to yards to run the program and told, no, the yard's on lockdown. We don't have no program today. And found out later on that they did. They just didn't want to run religious service. When something like that happens, whatever chaplain that you're working with, or we have CRMs, which are the community resource managers, which are the supervisors, report it so something can be done about it. Cell front is always a viable option when you're not allowed to have service. You can check with the sergeant, and he will let you know whether you can go to cell front. Cell front, you always need to be careful whenever you're at a cell front, especially for the women, because the men will do some pretty nasty things in front of you.
Can you define a cell front?
The cell front is, usually when we have religious service, we have every institution has a chapel, and you bring your group together to have service in the chapel. When that's not available, you go to, cell front means you go inside of the building where they're in their cells, and you walk on the tier and you talk to them at their cell door. They can't get out, and it's a little difficult because you have to talk through a crack. But for the women, you need to be really careful when you do cell fronts, because some of those guys are pretty sick and they'll do some pretty nasty things in front of you. They do it to the female officers all the time. What can you give to inmates? The best thing is nothing other than religious material. And that's the only thing you should ever give to an inmate. Don't give him anything else. And he will ask you. And they have some good stories. Oh, they can make it sound so good. They can make it sound so pitiful. And they're very good at it. As long as I've been working in the prison, they still come up to me with some good stories. I had a guy that came to my service. I had service on Delta Yard every Tuesday. This guy came to my service every Tuesday, and he wanted a phone call, which is at my discretion to give. And I said, well, no, you don't have a death in your family, nothing's going on. I'm not going to give you this phone call. He consistently came to service for about 6 months. Then he went out and he got sick, he had surgery, and he said he really needed to talk to his wife. And he put it on, can I give him a phone call? I said, okay. So I called a phone call because they can't call if there's a block on the phone. His wife had a block on the phone. I put the phone call through, and as soon as I said who I was and who was calling, I heard her whole attitude change. I said, uh-oh, I think I made a mistake. He proceeded to literally chew his wife out on the phone. And she just going through the motions trying to get off the phone. When the phone call was over, I called her back and I apologized. I said, ma'am, I apologize for what happened. I understand what happened. You don't have to explain. It won't happen again. I haven't seen that inmate since. Never came to another service. He spent all that time because all he wanted was a phone call so he could call and chew out his wife. They'll take their time to get what they want. And even me, with all the experience I had, was supposed to know better. He got me. So if he can get me, and you don't have no experience, he'll definitely get you. Tell him no. The best answer for an inmate is always no. Just tell him no. No, I got to go check with somebody.
Excuse me, I was going to say they got nothing but time.
Nothing but time. That's right. You got some guys that's all they have is time. A guy that's doing life, what are you going to do to him? Give him more life? One of the times when I'll share this with you. One of the times when I was in county jail, I was due to get out in a couple of days, and the officer wanted me to get up and do some work, and I didn't want to get up and want to do the work. I was getting out in a couple of days anyway, so he kept telling me to get up, and I wouldn't get up. And he kept telling me to get up, I wouldn't get up. Finally, he came by and said, man, if you don't get up, you're going to have some real serious problems. I said, what are you going to do, put me in jail? Well, he didn't like that, so he rolled me up and put me in a lockup room, but I didn't care. I was getting out in 2 days. And that's the kind of attitude you have when you're living the wrong kind of lifestyle. How much time am I out of time?
So if you can wrap it up a little bit. I know everyone's really interested. We don't hear this end of things.
Yeah.
Couple of questions and that'll be it.
How about religious service in juvenile facilities?
They have them in juvenile facilities too. I have never worked in one, but they do have them. But it's even more challenging in juvenile facilities because the juvenile facilities are real tough. When you get to prison, you got guys who made a name for themselves and pretty much stable into whatever life they're in. When you're in the juvenile facility, these are all the youngsters that haven't lived yet and don't know anything and want to make a name for themselves, so it's kind of violent.
What's the resistance to religious services? Is it that it just creates extra work for the staff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're lazy, don't want to do their job.
Yes, in the past, we've been able to get sentinels and such brought into the prisons along with the science and health as well as vitals. And lately, we were told that if you have staples, you can't go ahead and bring any of these items into the prisons. Do you have a clarification on that?
That's for the medical units. You were probably trying to get something into a medical, we have medical units, it's called DMH. These are severely mentally ill people who they do not want to have anything that they can cut themselves with, so they can't have it. But the regular prison, they can have staples. So I'm pretty sure what your problem was, they were trying to send it to a mental part of the prison. But the regular part can have just regular. What they can't have, depends on the level of the prison. Level 4 can't have hardback books. They have to be paperbacks. Levels 2, 1 and 2 and 3 can. So the best way to find out what's allowed is called the CRM, the Community Resource Manager at any prison, and they can tell you what is allowed and what is not allowed. Last one.
I'm just working in the county jail,
Uh-huh.
and they have outlawed staples because they found a weapon which had been made with them. They took all the staples, they wound them together, and then they inserted them into the tip of a very tightly rolled series of papers, which made like a stiff handle.
Yeah.
So that was in the lockdown unit, so they've kind of said no staples. So we have to remove staples from every monitor, every sentinel, and they stay together pretty well unless you drop them.
Yeah, they haven't went that far in the
Yeah,
in the
and it's
prison
just in
yet.
our county jail.
But they can make weapons out of anything. They can make weapons out of plastic, out of saran wrap. They can make a weapon out of saran wrap. Okay, absolute last one, because she's giving me that evil eye.
This has been wonderful to hear from you, Joel. Thank you. Levels. Can you just explain the levels? You talked about 4 different levels of the jail.
Level 1 is
Prison.
level 1 is would be your inmate who continues to get to drug driving, petty theft, no violence, no serious crime. Level 2 is you got burglary, maybe not a lot of serious violence. Level 3, you have violent crime and a criminal history. Level 4, severely violent. And then from level 4, we don't have a level 5, but we have Pelican Bay. And if you get to Pelican Bay, that's it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. Okay.
Thank you.